Hello. So, this is my late night stream. It's almost 10:30, and I haven't made a video in quite a while now. Video with any views on it anyways. I saw the last video, it didn't get any views. Kind of disparaging, but I guess it wasn't really that important in the video anyways. But I'm making one tonight, specifically because I need to make videos for this channel, and I figure I'm disparaging the confessional talking video too much. A lot of best my thoughts come from basically just talking. So, this video is titled, What is Freedom? Among other things. So that's just going to be my starting point. Basically, I've been thinking a lot since I've came to Utah, and I'm just going to start with my thoughts on freedom, and then I'm just going to end somewhere after that. So, freedom, when you get into politics, is very hard to define. I remember taking a political ideologies course. Basically, they defined freedom as a group. There's this group over here, right? Whichever group you define, and this group has an obstacle, right? A political, societal obstacle that can only be solved through politics. And then it jumps over that obstacle through politics, and then over there is the goal. And the goal is freedom, basically. So that's the freedom is a multi-step process where group, uh, barrier, and then goal once you get over the barrier. And I think this definition is great when you're talking about political ideologies for a political ideologies class, because that's what political movements do. They take like a group of some kind, and for in the book they talked about, liberalism, fascism, feminism, all these various different ideologies from across the political landscape, and they just put that there. So that's the politics. And then you jump with your movement, right? You establish your fascist dictatorship or something like that. Maybe you free all the women. Maybe that'd be good. You do that, and you get to your goal. Okay, so that's a good thing for what it is in politics. But in a more practical, pragmatic level, I guess there are more complicated ways to go about this. But what does freedom mean on the individual level? So, once again, if you go into the political world, it's hard to define it. So, if you go to like liberals, it would be like you gotta have free healthcare, you gotta have the ability to get gay married or have an abortion and stuff. And over in the conservatives, you own cars, houses, you work and you don't get taxed and stuff like that, and freedom doesn't work without religion anyways, and things like that. And I think it might seem like these concepts of freedom are contradictory, but they're actually appealing to the same thing, and let me explain. To understand what freedom, I think, truly means, is you gotta go over to way out there politics. Ted Kaczynski, basically. So, in his book, Technological Slavery, he talks about the difference between having fun, quote unquote, and freedom. He says that technological society, with its ability to give us cars to drive, give us, movies to watch, all the free sex we can be having, that's fun, according to him. That's not freedom. And at one point in the book, he says a line where it's like, you can fly your way to Tahiti, but you didn't fly your way to Tahiti. You paid someone to fly you to Tahiti. Or there was another quote, you didn't, when you go and get nose surgery, you didn't You didn't change your nose. The surgeon did. You just paid the surgeon to change your nose for you. You didn't actually change your nose. And from those two quotes, you can it clicked to me about what Ted Kaczynski was talking about when he's talking about freedom. And I think that definition of freedom is actually the best definition that explains the most phenomena of what people are talking about that I've come across or that I think of. I don't know. If you disagree, you could write into the comments section, whatever, but this is what I think. Okay. Freedom means ownership. So, how does this explain things? Well, think about it this way. You go and say, let's do the fundamental basic rights, okay? Like freedom of speech. You own your political opinion. You are allowed to have your political opinion for yourself, unless if you're like violent or something like that, and you can use it to affect change in the world. You own it. The government cannot like take it away from you. There's the whole like yelling fire in a crowded theater, but that's just this sideline thing. For the most part, you can own your political opinion. And then there's the Second Amendment. You can own guns. Of course, you own guns to, according to the original Founding Fathers document, to protect your other rights. So, yes, but there's also that too. But you own guns to protect your other rights, but you own the ability to defend yourself. So that's the Second Amendment, okay? And then you get to the Fifth Amendment, secure in your persons and property. That's your ownership. You own your property, you own your papers, you own your body, sort of. I guess with bodily autonomy, though that's not a right that was put into the Constitution. You can sort of infer it, and people, in a way, sort of have a form of bodily autonomy in their head, though it's not like as clear-cut as like you can get an abortion wherever you want, but people... Well, vast majority of people think like, the government can't like take out your organs, even if it's to save a life of someone else and whatnot. So they would have that concept of bodily autonomy, but not like other kinds. Those would be too wild for them for different reasons. But that makes sense because you own your body, sort of. I mean, pregnancy is a whole different thing. That's why the abortion issue is so complicated. But getting back to that, and of course, you can't take away people's houses. Of course, we have eminent domain, but yeah, I guess that's kind of like an infringement on freedom, I guess. But basically, you own your property. So like soldiers can't come to your house, things like that nature, and you extend it to like the other like groups. The liberals and conservatives in the modern era. So basically, you got the conservatives, have a business, right? You own your business. You own your wage income. You go to school. You own your skills and stuff like that. And if you're like a liberal, right? You're a woman, right? So you get to have a career. You get to own your career. You get abortion. You get to own your body in the only way that they view can be consistent. Okay, and if you're like gay or something, you get to own your relationship through marriage. And this is where it comes in of like I remember there was this socialist YouTuber guy who said this, in order to be free, you have to be held accountable for your actions. And that makes sense underneath the ownership dynamic. You own your choices, what you make, moral choices and not, things like that. And that then goes into a sort of like philosophical things about life, like, you own your morals. Are you a vegetarian? What religion do you follow? Do you tattoo yourself? Do you follow exercise habits every day? Take control of your life, basically, like all the self-help videos, and in the way they would probably in their videos promise you freedom, the ability to own other things like your life, relationships, girlfriends, and whatnot, by owning your habits, owning yourself, basically ownership. So basically, freedom has to do with ownership. It has to do with like either owning things, owning stuff, owning relationships. Like you're in a relationship with someone, you own that relationship. You have a sort of responsibility, I guess. You make decisions in that relationship but you own it in that you are responsible to that, basically, and you own your kids in a way by you don't physically own them, like you can't buy or sell them. We don't have slavery, you can't do that, but you can like own them and how you like raise them and stuff like that. There of course is disputes about like if you have a religious belief, can we make you do medical treatment to take care of your kid anyways despite that, that's ownership. But I think so far the answer is no, we can't do that. I think, I don't know. But yeah, so the whole thing of freedom, what people are talking about, and I believe you can apply this across the political spectrum. Again, if you don't agree with me, you can put it in the comments, is ownership. You can apply it to liberals, you can apply it to conservatives, you can apply it to Ted Kaczynskiites, things like that. But of course, then you'd be like, Karen, well, what about fascists? Well, fascism, and you can tie fascism to like all the ideologies in the past, basically Confucianism, or like how people just lived in the past with feudalism and whatnot. Now, for that's different, because the thing is that nowadays, with these gigantic infrastructure systems that provide constant streams of healthy, safe, and I guess somewhat affordable food, water, housing, air conditioning, cars, medicine probably not actually that affordable, but you can still get it though if we're not dying from the Black Plague, because we can treat it conceivably, and all these other stuff. It's like much easier to live as an individual. You can survive even if you're homeless. Like the chances of you actually like dying are pretty low, especially in comparison to the past, and even in places like the Victorian era where they had like people who would not have jobs, and they would like, unless if you are lucky and find a food bank somewhere, you would most likely die and end up in a ditch, literally starved to death. That's what will happen. That's the past. See, the thing about the past is, in most cases, with a few exceptions, you cannot survive as an individual. Not for long, anyways. You have to live in communities. And at that point, though, you become a sort of part of a team. Like you're on a regatta. And so you're on a team, the boat is society, and everyone has their own little oars, and they're rowing, and like in order to row you have to have a guy at the front who's like the commander or whatever the leader of a regatta is called, and he basically shouts the orders, and then you pull your oar to move the boat forward in this synchronized pattern, otherwise it won't work. That's basically that. And I would say that even in that instance, first of all, you probably would have ownership of things. You would still have skills, possessions, be able to impart values to a certain degree on your children, and I guess religious beliefs, depending on how tolerant of your religion they are. But even in that scenario, I would still argue that you can own your role. Basically, you can like play your role in a way that you could either play it well or play it poorly, and the way that if you play it well, you can bring your role up and bring yourself to the front, or closer to the front of the boat in a way, through people giving you more and more power. Now, of course, you can like hate your role and not want your role and be like, I'm a freedom fighter, I'm a butch lesbian living in the 14th century Europe. I hate this woman role. I don't want to do it. And like, likely flunk out of life because of it. That's completely fine. But you're owning that too. You're owning yourself essentially being a failure. And I hate, I'm friends with a lesbian. I would hate to say like, yeah, you were basically a failure. But back then, totally, absolutely, you would basically be a failure. But yeah, you would own that. You would own your role. So essentially, freedom in its purest form is ownership. Anytime someone talks about freedom, and you can experiment this for yourself, take the word freedom and replace it with ownership. And I think, I haven't quite tried this out yet in real life, except in my head, but the few times I tried it out, it seemed to have worked. Replace the word freedom with ownership. and you would get basically the same thing. You and as for like redistributing the wealth, the issue here is that it's hard to own stuff when you're at the bottom of the hierarchy. The thing is that, and this is a fact, they've done experiments on this. Wealth tends to congregate, right? Even if you're successful in a way, like probably like only like a quarter of what you do is actually what made you successful. I guess after a certain point, it's just wealth attracting wealth, basically. And imagine that on a societal level. Like, there's a whole bunch of people, and they're getting all this wealth, and they're getting so much wealth that other people don't have it. Like, I remember reading somewhere that, like, at the end of the Roman Empire, I think it was the Roman Empire, maybe it was the Republic, I don't know, but something along the lines of, like, 4 men owned, like, almost all the money. Okay, so, and like there wasn't really any market regulations in Rome. Okay, like people were living in shitty tenement houses that could fall on you any second. They didn't give a fuck. There was no welfare state. There was barely any police. It was pretty much as free market as you can at that time period. Okay, and even then, wealth still concentrated into the hands of a few really tiny elite. Okay, and so you can still have that and stuff like that today. So I can understand and agree with the liberals on that. If you already at the bottom and you don't have wealth, then you can't really build it to make yourself up. Of course, the conservatives will come and they'll argue like, yo, it's because of your personal choices, blah, blah, blah. But either way, it doesn't matter because this is an ownership issue. The conservatives would basically be arguing like you should own your morals and own yourself through discipline, and that's their anti-poverty program basically. So either way, it's about ownership. So try this next time. You take ownership and replace it with freedom. And so this is where I get into my sort of final part of my video. So basically, freedom is ownership, but as I stated beforehand, ownership can come with various things that make it not work, essentially. And so, with many blocks to freedom, ownership through that. That's why you had to have feminism, black liberation, etc., through that, because they're things that kept you in there from owning your stuff. And of course, they're still complaining about this stuff now, but I'm just like, at this point, it's like I remember reading about polio eradication, and basically they were talking about how, like, we're spending so much money to eliminate such a tiny thing. It's like squeezing Jello to death. That was their actual comparison. It was like squeezing Jello to death. I feel like that's what it is with, like, women's lib especially. It's like squeezing Jello to death. Like, you're at the point where, like, feminism basically denies any psychological, biological differences that would, like, interfere with the feminist movement, because like the idea that like women due to biological factors, like they're more wired for caregiving or something like that, and therefore would choose careers to go into caregiving that would earn them less money and therefore a bigger pay gap and whatnot, is just inconceivable to them. They can't imagine it. They would just rather deny it, basically. And I don't know. I suppose in a way that you can recognize that and say, well, we can change the system. I would say, like, Ted Kaczynski goes really good into the second book about this. Like, you can't really, change the system, or at least it's kind of like not really controllable in the way that you want. It's not like a lever that you can just pull. It's like a whole bunch of things. Like, you take one system for one thing, like a butterfly flapping its wings and a hurricane starts. You take one little thing and it affects so many other things that you cannot see. It's ridiculous. So in a way, I'm not really like very drawn to the feminist cause idea because of this. But I guess there's also the other stuff like black liberation, which is basically like, why are black people poor? Well, I guess you can cite poverty, but then I remember in high school, I had a history teacher who pointed this out. It's like, if you give black people money, say through like reparations, what's going to happen is that then they're going to spend the money, give it to white people who essentially own pretty much everything, right? There's some black-owned businesses that would benefit, but basically what would happen is that they would spend it to all the white people, and then they'll have the money. If you were to actually give them a good amount of reparations, that would actually fix their poverty, anyways. And then of course the thing is that then the conservatives are going to come back and be like, well, if black people just did not have single mothers, this wouldn't be a problem. So that's just going to be a barrier, because they're just, even if you don't believe that, they'll just keep believing that until nothing. And it's easier to point out racism back when you had, like, say, white only signs, or cops with dogs attacking people, lynchings, things like that. It's harder now, though, to say that racism exists. I believe it does, yes, but it's harder now. See here, like George Floyd was one case, so that helped their cause, but overall, like, racism is more invisible. Like, it's easier to deny. It's not, like, in your face. So therefore, I also believe it would be hard to stomp out, and especially if it's like, a reparations type issue, because then all the poor white people are going to show up and be like, well, what about us? And they need a movement and whatnot, and I'm not a socialist. I don't believe socialism works. So you can't throw that at me. You can't be like, well, be a socialist. Socialism doesn't work. Just look at anywhere where it's been tried. It's failed at basically everywhere. And I'm not going to sit here and blame the CIA. The CIA, they're incompetent. They're not as competent as you think they are. They can't be the sole reason that's responsible for all these failures across all these different countries. Okay, if you run an experiment through all these different cultures, all these different countries, and they pretty much either A, fail, B, go into massive amounts of debt, or like C, turn into like semi-capitalist structures anywhere, then basically your experiment has failed. So that's why I'm not a socialist. Anyways, so I guess to sum this up, and I guess for future videos I'm going to write, what we really need more instead of politics is fine. Politics has its place. But what we need as, like, a culture, or as individuals in a way, is an understanding of philosophy. Right? And I'm not going to get into philosophy. Maybe I'll make a series on philosophy in the future. I don't know. But for now, I have this. What I'm doing now is technically philosophizing, basically. This is philosophy. What I'm doing now is philosophy. And so, in that case, I think I did a pretty good job laying out my thoughts. So anyways, I want to know what you guys think in the comments. Thank you, by the way, for watching all the way through to the end. You are so brave and stunning. But I want to hear from you. If you have any opinions on whatsoever on what I thought, if I'm wrong, if I'm stupid, if I'm correct, if I'm great, please leave it in the comment section so that way I can read it and stress about it. Thank you, and